Hello to our wonderful viewers. Welcome to Fellowship of the Golden Age. And today I'm doing an interview with the very lovely Anu. Hello, Anu.
Hello, Neptune. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, I am too. And I might just sort of say that this project, it's such a co-creative one. Like, it's not like I have all the answers and just how to do these interviews. Like, what I've been learning is it's a very co-creative, collaborative process. And I have already we had one go at an interview last week, and we both reflected on it and felt like, oh, we could have done better. And we just talked about little changes and shifts and everything. And to me, it's just all a part of, like, the true co-creation of the process, that we were both able to work with one another and not worry about any failure, just knowing that we can choose to have another go at this. And so I'm feeling in a really good space for this right now. And so we've done a few little tweaks with the format of how this is going to go. And so I really appreciate your collaborative support in all of this, Anu. And yeah.
I mean, to me, it's actually a process of coming into oneness. So
Yeah.
where it's not just you or it's not just me. It's something that you do that brings me up, and then what I do brings you up, and then it helps the whole process.
Yeah.
So I think overall we're doing better now.
Yeah. And also we're in oneness with the masters too. Like, we've invoked light, and I feel a lovely sort of dome of energy around me right now. It's lovely. Like, with all of us, it's kind of yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the intention of this first series is to reflect through our lives and our spiritual journeys by also focusing on separate selves. So because it's such an overarching theme, the separate selves, I thought maybe we'll just start off the interview with Anu. Would you give a universal description of what is a separate self, so that any new viewer will have an idea of what we're talking about?
Yes. So to me, a separate self is more like an internal program or an internal response, and or a trigger, you might call it, where when someone, so it's a response to an outer situation, a person, and even something that somebody says in a certain tone that might just trigger me to respond in a certain way, and I can respond without thinking. It just comes out.
Yep.
So sometimes, that kind of, so it just starts, like, it triggers an internal program within me. I like to call it a program, where I just start responding. And then later on, I think, oh my God, like, why did I do that? But sometimes, you don't realize, and you just kind of respond a certain way. And it could be something small, or it could even be like responding to a situation in life. It could be like a big trigger, and like a reaction which is happening at a deeper level than I might even not consciously realize.
Yep. Okay. No, that's good, and I think that's very understandable. So we'll move on now. So I want to just sort of get to know a bit about your life, because this is all about introducing the different students. So could you give, like, for now, just a really brief sort of earthly timeline, so we just know, like, that sort of structure of your life? Could you just do that first?
So I'm Indian. I was born in India in a Hindu family, grew up in India, and I finished my graduation in my early 20s. I moved to the United States to do higher studies, and I started working in the US. So I spent my 20s over there, then got married, and somehow we moved back to India. So I've been now in Mumbai for the last 15 years.
Okay.
And Yeah, so we started a family here. I have a son, and I'm living with in a joint family with my in-laws. So we have a nice family unit going, and that's how it is.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like sort of it's very different your family situation compared to, in the Western world, we've just got like these nuclear families where it's small, and whereas you've just got people around you all the time. It's kind of like
Oh yes,
that would
there's
challenge
never a dull moment here. It's like you know, there's my in-laws, there's me, my husband, my son, and we even have an aunt who lives with us. And so yeah, it's a big family, and it comes with its pros and cons both.
yeah. Yeah.
It's a learning experience. It's a good thing.
Ah,
I mean,
I
if you
bet.
look at it that way, you can look at it that way. There's much to learn from being in this situation, and I feel there is much to learn even if you're in a nuclear situation.
Yep.
You learn other things, but this is a different experience. So
Yeah, yeah. Like I know with myself, like I could quite easily have just become a complete hermit and live in solitude, but the push was always like you got to go and be in the world, be with people, because you can't discover what your triggers are unless you've got people pushing your buttons. And
yes, indeed, it happens all the time. It's like someone here, someone there, and like things are just happening. One thing after the other. Sometimes, it's, and now with the child, it's the school, teachers, and therapists, and a lot of stuff going on, a lot
yeah,
of people, a lot of experiences. So yeah, you can take it as a learning experience. I think a condensed learning experience.
yeah. There wouldn't be a dull moment. So, would you slide in and now just give us a bit of like describe your spiritual journey, to just share with me your story?
Yeah. So I told you, well, the spiritual part kind of, maybe it was there from, like, right from the start, but there were certain key points in my life where I just felt like, okay, this is what I want to follow. So I think when I was young, I would like to, just read some texts which were kind of, beyond, like, the other world kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the main thing happened when I was 25. I was in the US working, and I came across this book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And my sister gave it to me. She said, just read this. And I read it, and I think I had, like, it was not the words, it wasn't it was like an inner experience I had while reading the book. Like, something within me just kind of opened, or like it got ignited. I would say it got ignited, that there's something else, and everything that he was saying, the author, was just, touching something within me.
Mhm.
And I was just so moved by it. It was like more of an experience rather than a book. And but then, like, and then at that time I kind of had the idea that, okay, maybe I should leave the material life and get into a monastery. But somehow that didn't happen, and I think I was meant to, so that's around the time, I met my to-be husband, and things kind of got serious. We got married, and then it moved on to, we had a family, and my son was born, and we just moved back to India. He was very young. My son was around 6 months or something, and he started falling sick a lot. So
Mm.
even when he was born, he was a little bit, but things just kept getting, more and more serious, and he was falling sick. He was having a lot of difficulty thriving. Like, he had breathing problems. He couldn't. He had immunity problems. So he was always either in the hospital or unwell at home, and things kind of, just kept going like that for a long time, like for maybe 8 9 years. So somewhere in between that time is when, I mean, what the natural thing, I just turned to God. I'm like, why this? Why is all this happening to me? And, a lot of people, this is a very common thing, a lot of parents, when they have a sick child, they turn to God and they're like, asking questions and angry at God and feeling negative towards life, towards the life experience. And that's how I felt. I felt, I was really upset. I was getting depressed because I would see, like, when I would look at my son, they say, the child brings you joy. But I would look at my son and I would see he's always sick. He's unhealthy. He can't breathe. He can't sleep. He can't eat. If he eats something, he falls sick. I'm like, where's the joy? Neither is my son happy, nor am I happy, and neither was the family happy. All of us were like, oh my God, like what's happening? And it was like every 6 to 9 months he would have some kind of surgery where suddenly something happened, he can't breathe at night, or like he fell down, or he had some hernia problem, something or the other. And then at the age of 5 we discovered, he is autistic, he has autism. And so that was kind of okay, but more of like the health issues. So that's how my spiritual journey started. And at some point, I think when he was about 5, 6, 7, I don't know when, somebody introduced me to a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. And that's when I came across the term of ascended masters. And I'm like, oh, who's this? And I wanted to find more. So I just Googled it right away, and I got a lot of things, I found about the I Am movement, Summit Lighthouse. I was interested in the violet flame. I'm like, what's this violet flame? And I didn't follow anything. I just started using the violet flame, like little, those little decrees. And for my son, I'm like, maybe this will help him get better.
Just take a moment. Just take a moment and just sort of say like what the violet flame is, like why you did it and what it's doing, like why you use that for your son.
So when I read about the violet flame, I obviously had no idea what it is, but it said, the description said, and it was more from, I think, the Summit Lighthouse teachings. They said that it's a ray, it's an energy, a vibration that transmutes. So if you have any kind of negative energy around you, which could be an illness, it could be fear, anger, any of the lower energies, it will transform that energy, and it will change it into a higher energy, which is the love and healing, and all the positive qualities we have, like of the rays. So I thought it was easy because I could do it on the go. I didn't have to like sit somewhere. Like if I was walking, I was doing whatever, because I was always busy taking care of him or doing something at home. So I started using that, and I don't know if it helped. I don't know what helped. Like but things just kind of went on like that. And then I found Kim Michael's website, and I was reading that. I was reading dictations from that. At first, I didn't, like I said, no, I don't want to go into all this. And then like I started reading dictations, but I still kept coming back. I would look at it, then I would go and do other stuff, then come back. And I said, no, something about this is attracting me. And so anyway, I would come back, and I found somehow one of the dictations from Jesus really like got me, and at that time I was like, okay, I like what is being said here. It makes sense to me. And I want to do this seriously. I want to get into this seriously. And mind you, I was surrounded by people in my family who are doing other stuff. I'm a Hindu. I'm from India. So India is like, everybody is religious. Everybody is doing something or the other. We pray, we light the incense, and everyone has like a little temple in the house. We have temples. So there's a lot of God in our lives. It's like any religion. But my other family members, like my mother-in-law, we also started going to some other teachings from other spiritual movements. So there was a lot of this spiritual stuff happening in the family. There were talks by people, and my mother-in-law liked something, my father-in-law was doing something else, and but I was more into this. So I was attracted to this. And I decided to, at one point I decided, I'm like, now enough of being on the fence, because now I've decided I like it. And there was a time where I didn't know, should I believe this? or should I not? Should I believe it or should I not? And then one day I just made an inner decision. I'm like, I like what he's saying. I like what's being written. It makes sense to me. So why not? You know, like it
Mm.
was, I was stopping myself, and then I decided, I'm like, why not? Let me just get more seriously into this. And that's when, I started, I think I bought my first book about mastering the 7 rays by the Mahachohan. And then I got seriously into the teachings and
See, even just that, like that little internal struggle about, what the tradition of India says, and then you just checking in and like, well, actually, what do I want? What's my choice? Like, that's a great example of like ditching a separate self, like, the cultural traditional one,
yes.
and
Yeah.
stepping into something more, because it's always about dropping away something that doesn't serve us and stepping into something that's more than where we were before. And yeah.
Yes, yes, and it started off as an experiment, but there was this part of me that I just let go and I said, no, I don't want to stick to what I had been doing all this time. And I just felt like I want to do this. And I decided to, seriously follow the teachings and do what, the masters were saying, do it. Started with decrees and invocations and whatever the teachings were, I started following them because I wanted to.
And did you feel any when you first started? Because when I first came across the teachings, the thing that I was most resistant with was actually invoking light. Like I just sort of go, oh, do I have to sort of set aside 20, 40 minutes, even an hour if it's a big rosary, and use up all my time doing that? And then I remember like reading something that Jesus said, and he said, well, what else are you going to do? Like just sit there with your mind going round and round in circles? I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Even
Did
for
you
me, like there was one about healing, all the different invocations. And the first time I looked at it and I'm like, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4. Oh my God, like this is so
have?
long. And I'm like, no, and then like the verses. And I said, no, this doesn't make, like, this is so, it's so weird. And then then for a long time, I would, say it in my mind. I wouldn't say it out loud.
Mm,
Uh, then, once you realize that it's helping, it's working, then you realize, okay, this is working, and you start doing it. That's
yeah.
what happened with me. But in the beginning, I didn't. And it took me a while. But the good thing is, like, I stuck in it. And every time, like, I would go back to it, I would feel good. Like, even if I read it teaching, it's not
Mm,
like feeling good within. I would feel like my energies were raised. I
yep.
would feel lighter, and I would feel little different, that I would always magnetize back towards the teachings, especially if I was in a low phase or something, bad happened in my regular life, and something that I was not happy. So yeah,
Yeah.
and there has been a change where earlier I was always more in a negative frame of mind, and now, after so many years, after 7 8 years of following the teachings, I'm mostly in a positive frame of mind. And I do go into, so now I know that when I go into negative frame of mind, it is a separate self, it is something that's triggering me, and
Yep.
then I have to go back and think, okay, what was it, what happened, what happened today, when did that negative thought start, and then it builds. Like for me, what happens is, it usually builds. It takes, I mean, as time has gone by, earlier I would be in a self for maybe weeks,
Mm,
then it became days, and now usually, I mean, I'm not an expert yet, but usually it is a few hours, like half a day, and I'm having a, I'm in a negative frame of mind, and I'm wondering, why am I feeling like this? And then I go into it, and I find that there is something in there that, I'm reacting to something that somebody said, or my own negative narrative. Like sometimes, like the last week interview we had, right?
yep.
And then I went into, like a kind of negative frame of mind, like, oh, I made a mistake. It's like when I make a mistake, that is, I always, till now, like, I've not been able to reach the point where I will say, it doesn't matter. Like I'm still judging myself, that the self that kind of judges. And so it's not just for me, it judges others also. So I have to be more mindful. Like usually I need to get to that point where I'm more mindful that, okay, now I am judging myself. I am saying I made a mistake. Whereas in the teachings, they say very clearly that, like the Buddha's teaching about forgiveness, like you can immediately forgive, what, immediate unconditional forgiveness of yourself and of others. And if you do that, like when I do that, I feel great, like I feel so free.
Yeah. And I just remind myself that this is all one big experiment. Like, when we're here on earth, we're here to experiment with making choices. So, you had that reaction, and my reaction was I came away and I felt like it could have been better. So for me, I noticed a reaction in me, which was fearing upsetting you by letting you know, like saying
No.
something, and I had to sleep on it, and I just woke up the next morning and I was like, okay, let's just say something, and I just worded it, in the most loving possible way.
Yeah.
People were like, yeah, let's do it again. So yeah.
Because I already felt that. I'm like, oh, like I want to, I'm not happy with this. And
Yeah.
so it all worked out.
Yeah. Okay, well, and I'll just say that so far, like, yeah, like we're just doing like about 1 billion times better already. It's feeling good. Like, it's worth it. Like, it's worth it sort of going, yeah, I want to choose something higher because I know, we can achieve more here. Um, and so what I really want to speak with you about is your son Harmon. And as you know, like I have a passion for children with special needs. I've taught a lot of children with Asperger's and autism and all manner of disabilities. Although I don't really like the word disability, to be honest, because there's something in that's holding back the individual. But I'd love it if you could just share a bit about your journey with Harmon and what you've learnt with him, from him, and so on. Like, just share.
Yes, yes, definitely. There's a lot I have to say about him. But, I think the key things are that, first of all, I've realized that, he is actually my teacher in a way in this lifetime. He's taught me so much. And I didn't realize that he's teaching me, whereas I thought I was teaching him, as a parent. And I wanted him to be, first of all, I wanted him to be healthy, like, in the beginning stages where he was sick a lot. Um, and there was this phase where when he was always falling sick, we were trying to uncover that what's the underlying cause, why does he fall sick all the time. And we went to a lot of different doctors, trying to get an opinion, trying to do tests and trying to figure out. And one, not just one, quite a few of them said, they usually came back with, there's really nothing we can do about it, and this is how it is, and there's no cure, and there's no, like, it was more like a no, like it's out of our hands. And then there was this final, I think it was like one final trigger. It was a trigger for me, where one doctor said something in a, not in a nice way, it was a little strong worded, and more like, it was like a sentence, like, okay, that's it, this is how he's going to be his whole life, don't expect things to improve. And and that really, got to me. It's like, no. Then, I spent days thinking about it. And I remember sitting, one day I was very upset, and I always cry a lot. So then I went for a walk. I was upset, talking to God, and then this was going on in my head, and I realized, I'm like, I don't accept this. I just cannot accept that things cannot get better. Like,
Mm.
I cannot accept that he's just 6 and he has a whole lifetime ahead and he's going to stay like this. So it kind of, this was also an inner decision, an inner process, which made me feel like, I don't care what these doctors are saying, I don't accept it. And I just decided to go with that. I said, something will happen. things are going to get better. And then I decided I'm going to pray to God. I'm going to ask God to help me, and 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 I'm going to work with him. I'm going to put in the best I can. So at this point, I want to tell you that in hindsight, I feel like this was there's the the role we take on where you want to save someone. So I wanted to save him. I wanted that no, nothing can go wrong with him. And the role comes on very strongly for most mothers. It happens to fathers also, but with the mothers, it's very strong. And in my case, it was very strong. It still is. You want to save your child, and especially when the child is sick and, has a disability, has autism or whatever, special needs. So this happened like way back when he was maybe 5 or 6, and I decided. I said no, I'm not going to accept this, and I kept on, kept doing whatever came in front of me. Like, okay, try this, try that, and it took some time. But I think by the time he was 9, we had to do some treatments and surgeries, and physically, the ill health kind of was gone. Like, he was okay. He was now thriving. We didn't have to worry that he might just not make it. You know.
Wow. Wow.
So that was like, okay. I felt like finally, we did that. But then there's a part 2 to that.
Yep.
So there was this phase where, like, I was like, I have to save him, and then that kind of continued after the age of 9. He's 15, 16 now.
Okay.
And so that was another like 7, 8 years. And around this phase is when I started following the teachings more seriously. Started the decrees, invocations, reading teachings, and trying to find out about the separate selves. So it was more about a process of self-observation. I was always trying to observe myself in relation to him. So I realized, of course, others, but mainly him. And I realized that, okay, like, I want him to do this. I want him to be independent. I want him to learn to read, write, maybe come up with something so he can build a career or whatever. Do something so he can lead an independent, a meaningful life. And that was my goal. So I tried all kinds of things. And the problem was that whatever I was trying wasn't working. So I was always getting disappointed. I was always getting, just like failure in everything. So in fact, that brought out this failure self. Like, if I couldn't get an outer result from him, I couldn't get him to achieve, like, okay, now he's independent in this activity. He can dress himself, or he can bathe, or he can do whatever, few things, and I just kept getting failure. And I'm like, I would feel like, okay, I am a failure. And so then the teachings helped with that also, that, it's not about the outer result. This is also another big lesson I learned. It's more about the process and not the result. Don't try to get a result. And just, so it was more about trying to be mindful of how I was being with him, observing myself, observing how I was trying to maybe sometimes force him a little bit, that, you have to do this, or you have to be like this, and it wasn't working.
Yeah, because there's a lot of influence in the world. Like, you think about like Temple Grandin and people where they talk about, their parents, like, put in a lot of intervention, and sometimes it works. Sometimes you can sort of change the course of the individual's life, but it's different because each individual has their own path. And yeah, I discovered that too with some of the children. Sometimes I just had to get to this point of going, I just have to surrender and just appreciate this child as they are. They're not going to speak, even though I'd spent years for dreaming for that to happen, like the miracle of speech. And you just got to get to this point of accept, and that's when you're in oneness with that individual, because you've got to read into their soul and what their destiny, what their plan is, what their divine plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was the same for me. Like, I had to surrender to what, his higher will or his plan was for this lifetime, which may be that, he didn't plan to be an independent person, or independent in the sense not in the mind, but with, physically with the body, and he needs help. and we have to accept it. So I realized I was trying to force him into my own matrix. So of, he should be like this, but he was not fitting into my matrix, and I was always getting upset and feeling bad. And so I had to, look at myself, look at that pattern, and realize, okay, this is where, and then adjust myself that no, this is not working. And so I let it be. And instead of getting upset every time he needed help, I gave him the help, and I supported him, started supporting him that way. And he was happier, and things were easier. And he started doing things, something else which I had not even thought of. You know, he started getting into painting and art, and I never realized that he liked art so much. So, I learned through this process, and at some point, I had to surrender my matrix. I had to let go. That okay, I'm not here to fix him or save him. I'm here to just, be with him as a support and as a companion, and just allow him to be and give him that space to be himself. And as he was getting that space, what I realized was as he was feeling, fulfilled, happy, relaxed, I was also feeling the same. So we are
Yeah.
connected that way. And as I changed myself, for me, the biggest learning has been that the more I changed myself, I would see changes in him, and that would give me the fulfillment. So that was a big theme. That has been a big theme for me.
Yeah, so it's like he's your greatest teacher in a way. Like, when you look at it from the earthly perspective of like there's normal, and anyone who sits outside of normal, well, yeah, then we just whack these labels on them and they're not treated the same as everybody else. But as you develop the spiritual perspective, it's like you just see it all from a whole new perspective of like, wow, like when you were both on your way into this incarnation, like you can just imagine you and Harmon saying, yeah, he's saying, oh, I'll play this role, and and you play that, and we'll both learn what we need to learn. And um,
Yes, yes.
it,
And that also has been a learning experience for me, because I think I had that, this sense of like, okay, I'm not like trying to make myself a little small. Like, okay, I cannot really be myself. I have to fit myself to the situation, to the people. And but when we realized, okay, he has autism, he has all this, I had to first accept it. And along with my acceptance, I had to embrace it, which I did. I realized I accepted, I embraced it. And then I had to step up my own self and step out into the world. And the way I was with him, the way I treated him, the way I interacted with him, it was more like everybody looked at that and followed my lead. And people outside, teachers, other parents, uh, family members, friends, everybody felt like, okay, we can also treat him, we should treat him this way. And I took a lot of care to, treat him with the utmost, dignity and care, to make him feel really good about himself.
yeah,
And that has helped tremendously. It's helped me also,
yeah.
because I had to step up. Instead of hiding, I had to show myself. I had to be like, yeah, this is who I am, and I'm, this is how I'm with this boy, and this is our life, and it's okay. There's no big deal.
Is
We're
there
just
is there
living.
a certain stigma in your society, in Indian society, about special needs kids?
Yes, very big, very big.
Uh-huh.
So that was something that, accepting, embracing has, I mean, it must have, helped others, because I have seen people change their approach to
Hmm.
him when interacting with him in my, the building where, the apartment complex that I live in. I see that over here, because the way I treat him when we meet people at the, outside on the street, in the elevator, in the lobby, and people are nice to him, people talk to him, and even in the school, the school is, thankfully, they're not very rigid. they're open, and they take suggestions from parents. So, what suggestions I've given, they have taken them, they've implemented them. And one day the teacher said that, Harman is helping us be better teachers. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good enough. So I think
Yeah.
that is one more thing that we probably both put in our life plan, and we're, outplaying that in this life, and it's
Yeah.
ongoing. So
I remember you showing me a video of Harmon singing. I can't remember what he was singing, but he was singing a song. And to someone who doesn't know him, I didn't know what he was singing, but what I saw was like this pure joy coming out of him. And you knew what he was singing, didn't you? So can you just sort of finish the story of?
it was Christmas celebrations in school, and he had won. I think he had won the reindeer, you know,
Yeah,
prop, and he was singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
the one.
And he was so excited. So he loves to sing. So what happened one time was he was singing a song, and in school, they didn't let him complete the
That's what
performance.
happened in this video. Like you can
They
see
said
that
that,
microphone, and he's kind of like not wanting to move away because he wasn't finished. And
oh yeah, actually that was another one. I think he
oh,
was singing, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands.
that's it.
And there were four stanzas, and he said two or three, and one was left. There was just one left. And they were like, no, like they were trying to get him off, and they're like, he's got enough time. And then I did tell them later, I said, it doesn't matter whether you understand or you don't understand. First of all, you didn't give like a time limit that it should be within 1 minute or it should be within 45 seconds. And then, like, before he's finished, there was just one stanza left. The teacher said, we didn't understand what he was saying. I said, that's not the point. The point is to let him do the performance. Like, what difference? Let him feel good about it. And that's why they're on stage, to feel good about the performance, not that everybody needs to understand. Otherwise he would be on TV, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
So
that's amazing that you chose rather than to go into a reaction of like, they're doing this to my son and everything, but you were able to respond by, just expressing it to the teachers and showing them, just giving them the higher choice that they can make for him as
yes,
well.
yes, and that's how I've had to change. Like the earlier me, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go to the teachers and say anything, but now I do.
Mm,
Like, I've embraced, because now I feel like I'm an advocate for him, and I need to do that. I mean, that's his right as a citizen of the world, as a member of the school, as a member of the student body. He has a right to complete the performance, and why shouldn't he? So if he didn't get it, it's my job to, like, I should tell them. And of course I didn't fight. I told them in a nice way. So then otherwise they get into a defensive mode, and we don't want that.
yeah, yeah,
So we just want to just give like a basic feedback and see what they say.
yeah,
So it's been a learning experience, and I'm still learning all
yeah.
this.
Yeah. I know, it's just such a joy and you're so inspiring to hear you in your journey, how far you've come and the steps you've taken. And obviously, you're just going to keep moving higher and higher and further ahead. And I just applaud you for all that you've achieved. Yeah, with greatest gratitude from someone who has, so much passion for these children, but and also I just admire mothers in particular and how much you take on and how you've applied the spiritual journey so practically so that it's been supportive for both yourself, Harmon, the family, the school, people in public. It's remarkable. You've shared so much today. So thank you. Thank you.
It was my pleasure, really
Yeah.
my pleasure. I want to thank you for doing this, for taking the initiative and doing these interviews. It's amazing. I love it. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for that. I applaud you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's fun and I keep reminding myself like, to just come into that joy, just come into the joy and just enjoy myself and support you and everybody else in the process also. So it's time for us to say goodbye. So thank you
Okay.
once again.
Thank you, Neptune. I enjoyed
Okay.
this.
All right. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.